Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. Today's topic is Islam and China. I try to give a very broad picture on this topic. So it may be confusing if you have no background information, but I'll try to summarize in an orderly way. Let's see how it works. So some pictures about Muslims in China. So some background. This is the spread of Islam. You don't see the legend or annotation about the different colors, but basically the smaller area denotes the stage of the Islamic State under the period of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, near the end of the stage, of course. And the lighter color, the larger area, denotes the stage of the four rightly guided caliphs, the four Khalifa, and the extended to the purple one is the Umayyad period. Of course, there are other stages or periods of expansion of the Islamic Empire. So there's a saying, may not be very straightly authentic, but there's a saying that a holy prophet asks us to seek knowledge even unto China. But this is according to the Islamic principles anyway. Asks us to seek knowledge and to travel despite the long journey. So the Islamic engagement with Chinese are different aspects in the commercial field, also diplomatic, even military, and of course cultural. So we have some information on each of these areas. Firstly, of course, we know that the famous Silk Road. In fact, there are two routes. One is on land, the brown one, and the other is by sea, the blue one. But for the sea route, it's not just to Guangzhou. It's all the way to Qunzhou, and also even further north. But anyway, just an indication. And the western side goes all the way to, in fact, all the way to Europe. Yeah, not just stop at Damascus and so on. So you can see the commercial items for trading between China, the Middle East, Central Asia, Middle East, and even Europe, up to the Roman Empire. So first begins with the Tang Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty is between 618 and 906. So it overlaps with the first period of Prophet Muhammad's prophethood and the four rightly guided caliphs. So basically, you can see the yellow area is the core area of the Tang Empire, and you have the darker color, the surrounding kingdoms, which were paying tribute to the Chinese kingdom. So during the Tang Dynasty, there were a lot of foreigners already in China. Guangzhou is the southern city, just north of Hong Kong. So there were many foreign traders there. and including the Arabs and Persians, um, also through the Indian Ocean, the sea route, since the 5th and 6th century. And these Central and West Asians, they resided in a particular area in Guangzhou and Xi'an. This is in the old days, Xi'an is called Chang'an. These are foreign quarters for the foreign traders. And foreigners includes different people of different religious affiliation, including Jews, Zoroastrians, Christians, and of course Muslims. And there were hundreds and thousands of them by the 9th century. And you can see during the Tang Dynasty, this is a picture of the foreign emissaries going to the Chinese Empire. And this is the most famous emperor of the Tang Dynasty, Taizong. Following him is Gozhong. So we want to talk about Gozhong in particular because his period overlaps with the four rightly guided caliphs. In particular, the third caliph is Othman from 644 to 656. So there is an imperial record um, from the Song Dynasty, recording that during the Tang Emperor Gozhong is 651, the third caliph Othman sent an emissary to the Tang Emperor, and they were on the friendly terms, and in fact, it so happened that the emperor understood that the teachings of Islam were compatible with the main Confucian teachings in China, and so the Muslims go for trading and also can practice their faith in the empire with freedom. And in fact, there are many similarities in the teachings of Confucius and Islam. One of them is the doctrine of the mean. And in the Quran, the Surah 17, verse 110, is also mentioned that we Muslims should follow a middle course, which has a very similar meaning. Both teachings of Confucius and Islam emphasize the importance of virtues, ties and order in the family system. And head of family is the husband or the father, and he's responsible for maintaining the family, the finance in modern terms, and security. And the young members should respect the elders. These are all the common virtues and teachings of Confucianism and Islam. So this is in Guangzhou, said to be the tomb of a famous Sahaba, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. But some historians disagree and said that this tomb is one of maybe the students of the Sahaba, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. So it doesn't matter, we leave that to the historians, but it is, I think, a historical fact or a record that the Sahaba did come to China, but the argument is whether he died in China or his tomb is in China. So from the 7th to the 12th century, we have the Muslim seafaring traders, and to southern China, we've mentioned Guangzhou and Quanzhou, and also Jiangzhou, Changzhou. There were small Arab and Persian Muslim trading communities, and they were classified as foreign guests. At that time, the Muslim traders maintained their own customs and practices. The Islamic law and language is Arabic. And so, somewhat, they were isolated, even though there may be some intermarriages, and also started the process of Hellenization, but not very widespread at that time. And this is the mosque in Guangzhou, also called the Light Tower Mosque, is claimed to be the oldest mosque in China, dated back to the Tang Dynasty. So there's another old mosque in the Fujian, Qunzhou. So we mentioned about um, some military campaign between the two mighty empires of Tang and the Muslim Empire at that time. Um, it was the first year of the Abbasid Caliphate. And the two empires were expanding, and they met at the place called Talis, and there was a battle in 751. Um, that battle, in that battle, the Abbasid army defeated the Tang dynasty's forces. So it has some historical influences and impacts. So we look at this picture, you can see that there were some prisoners of war. Um, from China. And you can see that in this picture, um, in fact, some of these prisoners of war, they were craftsmen, and some of them know how to uh, use have the technique of printing with paper. So you can see they in the picture, you can see that's some of the craftsmen were doing. And Muslims learn the how to use paper from these Chinese prisoners of war. So next is the Song Dynasty. So this is about the area occupied by the Song Dynasty. And you can see the neighboring kingdoms, Western Xia, Liao, etc. So Muslims became or began to be indigenized as part of the ethnic minorities of China, and they started to bring their families, or if they were single, they intermarry with Chinese women at the time. And also, Muslims work in the government, but not really in high positions at the time. And Islam also spread throughout China at the time, and masjids were being built, but they're still not too widespread at that time. So next is the Mongol Empire. This is the big empire of the Mongols. But later on, with the death of Genghis Khan, his sons split the empire into different kingdoms. And in China is the Yuan dynasty. So that's the area occupied by the Chinese empire during the Yuan dynasty. So, so the Mongol continued with their conquests during the 13th and 14th century, and the Muslims of Central Asia um, move eastward because the Mongol Empire occupied most of the Muslim Empire until they met defeats in Egypt when they met the army from Egypt, the Muslim Egypt. So all across the Muslim Empire, through Baghdad and Damascus, were then conquered by Mongols. And so the Muslims in the then Mongol Empire moved eastward and northway even to China. So there were different groups, Central Asian, Persian, Czech groups, and also um, some of them were craftsmen and maybe military recruits as well. So in the Yuan dynasty, Muslims gained positions in the government and even high positions. And that is a real widespread of Muslim ethnic groups in China, especially in northwest China. So beginning in the Yuan dynasty, so there were different government departments, especially for the Muslims. The Muslims at that time were called Hui. And one of the department is to administer the affairs of Muslims. So it's called, in the Chinese, it's called Hadi. In fact, it's should be the transliteration of the Arabic word Gadi, which means judge. So especially to judge between the affairs among Muslims according to the Islamic law or Sharia. And then there was a bureau especially to harvest the achievements of Muslims in astronomy, as well as pharmaceuticals, because at that time, if we study Western history, at that time it's called the Middle Ages and also called the Dark Ages. But in fact, that time is not the Dark Ages for humanity. It's only for the Europeans. For humanity, in fact, the civilization flourished, in particular in the Islamic Empire. If we have a session on Islamic contribution to civilization before, and if you go through that particular session, you'll know more details about the Muslim contribution to civilization during the Middle Ages, which was considered to be the golden age of Islam, and it spans over nearly 600 years. And so you can see there was a famous a book called translated as Muslim Pharmacopoeia, which is side by side with the Chinese medicine, which is the herbal medicine. So there's two different important medicine in China at that time. One is Chinese medicine, one is Muslim medicine. In fact, there is a book called Canon of Medicine in Arabic at the time, not in China, which was the reference of medical doctors for up to 500 years. So you can see how advanced was Muslims in medicine during that time. So next is the Ming Dynasty. So during the 14th to the 17th century, again, the Muslims were called Hui at that time. is considered as grouped together, all the Muslims grouped together as a separate ethnic group called Hui. And even Islam was nicknamed with Hui as the name of Islam. And it's believed that why it's called Hui um, is because of the spread of Islam through the the northwestern part of China to China, and in the northwestern part of China, it was the group of people residing in the northwestern of China at the time was Uyghurs. The forerunners of the present day Uyghurs. And in Chinese, um, they were called Huihe. So Islam was called Hui uh, as a nickname instead of Islam at the time. And the Muslims continued with the gradual acculturation to Chinese culture. And the main capital is Nanjing. And so you can see it's a center of Islamic scholarship. So we have a scholar, Wang Daiyu. He authored a book translated as a true explanation of the right religion. And it explained the basic Islamic tenets in Chinese for both Muslims and non-Muslims. And Muslims also started to establish the madrasa system. We call that in Chinese 经统教育. It's to spread the Islamic education in Chinese and to teach the children of different ages in the Masjid. So we'll talk about that a little bit in the following slides as well. So first, I should mention about there's a famous 100-word eulogy authored by the first emperor of the Ming Dynasty. It's also translated to English in this slide. So some people queried whether the first emperor of the Ming Dynasty was a Muslim or not, but most historians believe that he was not a Muslim, but I think his wife or he has some high position officials in his court who were Muslims. But he regarded highly Islam, and so he authored this 100-word eulogy. And also famous in the Ming Dynasty is the 7 voyages of Jiang He. It's between 1405 to 1433. It's said that a single expedition consists of up to 63 ships, and the larger one can be up to, in present day measurements, over 150 meters long and over 60 meters wide. Is believed to be the largest ship at that time. If you compare with a single ship as large as that can accommodate up to 1,000 sailors. If you compare at the end of the century, the end of the 15th century, the beginning of the 16th century, we all heard about the voyages of Christopher Columbus. In fact, the first voyage of Christopher Columbus consisted of only 3 ships in his fleet. And even the largest fleet he has 3 voyages and even the largest one should be the second one, only consists of 17 ships and up to only 1,500 sailors with him. But just mentioned, even a single ship, the larger one in the fleet of Jianghe, can accommodate up to 1,000 sailors. So you can see the difference in the shipbuilding technology at that time, I must say, at that time, between China and Europe. So this is roughly the extent of the voyages of Jiang He's voyages, but it's at least, I should say, at least to the eastern part of Africa, and some even say that he reaches America. But of course, there are different conflicting arguments, but we can be very sure that at least his voyages reached up to the east coast of Africa. So I would like to introduce the a special type of Arabic calligraphy in China. You can see this one. There's a special form of calligraphy, which is, I think, created in China. So also in China, Islam is regarded as pure and true. So the religion of Islam is also nicknamed Qingzhen as well. And also the mosque is used the name Qingzhenji. So the process of assimilation, integration that goes on, and you can find some common Chinese Muslim surnames here. And these surnames are believed to be the first syllable of the transliteration of the Muslims, because the Muslims probably will be using Arabic or Persian, and to assimilate and integrate into the Chinese society, they transliterate their name, but it's not a single character. So they adopt the first syllable as the surname. So you can see normally the Chinese Muslims or the classified as Hui have very special Chinese names as distinguished from the other Chinese. Integration was mandated through intermarriage by Ming law. It's a special obligatory or law in the Ming Dynasty that all the ethnic minorities, including Muslims, had to marry the Han Chinese. So that's governed by law. So that's a special provision to force, you can say, ethnic minorities to assimilate and integrate into the Chinese society. So you can see the different vessels with Arabic inscribed. So you can also see pictures of a women's mosque, but it's not common, but it happened to exist. It's in Kaifeng, but you can seldom see mosques dedicated only for women in other places or in other countries. So next, we introduce the Han Kitab, that is the literature, the Islamic literature in Chinese. So, and also introduce the first Chinese translations of the Quran. So you can see this example is the translation. You can see the meaning in Chinese side by side with the original Arabic text. This one is a bit special and needs more explanation. It may be small and you may not be able to see clearly. Of course, you can see the Arabic text, which is the original text of the Quran in Arabic. And you can also see um, Arabic in smaller letters. These are the transliteration of the Chinese translation. I repeat, you see the Chinese, um, which is the translation of the Quran in Chinese. You can see the Chinese characters. And the small Arabic letters, um, these are the transliteration of the Chinese translation of the Quran. So, because at a time, some Muslims, they may not be too familiar with the Chinese language, and but they learn in at home Arabic from the parents, etc. And so they need the transliteration of the Arabic letters to pronounce the Chinese translation. It's very peculiar to the learning of Quran at the time. And this one also needs some explanation. So you can see the Arabic text, and you can also see the Chinese meaning, but you can also see other Chinese characters, which are the transliteration of the Quranic text. So it's another kind of transliteration. The Chinese using this type of translation, they may be better in Chinese, but they lost the ability to read Arabic directly, and so they need the Chinese transliteration in order to read the Quranic text in Arabic. So this gives some examples of the translations, Chinese translations of the Quran in the 16th century, 17th century, uh, all the way through 18th century and 19th century. And you can see the latest complete translations in the 20th century, which are still being used nowadays. And it's mentioned that for different translators, some translate Allah, the Arabic word for the creator, God. They use the transliteration, the Chinese transliteration, and some use to translate the meaning as 真句 instead of the transliteration. Allah is the 普通话 transliteration of Allah in Arabic. So the next is the Qing dynasty. It resembles the boundary of the current China, except for Outer Mongolia. So, it's an era of expansion and reform, and more and more were built, and with more Islamic education in Chinese, and with the Muslim press also flourished at that time, and more contact with the Middle Eastern Muslims, with the Hajj pilgrimage carried out by Chinese Muslims with increased pilgrims, and also Chinese Muslims went to the Middle East to study as well. So there were reform movements bringing new ideas into China among the Muslim communities in order to promote the pure Islam. And I'll mention the main ones here. The reformers said that Chinese Muslims were too Chinese. Just I've shown you the example that some Chinese need the Chinese transliteration in order to read the Quran. And so one group is called Gadimu. This is a term for ancient or old Muslim communities, and this is the earliest school of Islam in China, and it belongs to the Hanafi school, a non-Sufi school of the Sunni tradition. And you also have Sufi orders called Menhuan, beginning in the 17th century. And they criticize the traditional Hui practices as too rote and formal. And they have the mystical tradition, which they consider to be more pure. And as for Islam, and which emphasized on private devotion and meditation, and also the veneration of saints. They have a strong institutional framework, and they have to solidify connections between Hui throughout China. And we'll mention about insurrections of Hui in the 19th century, and these Sufi orders played a big role in that. And then in the late 19th and early 20th century, you have the Yihe Wani movement, which is a type belongs to the Wahhabi movement. They criticize both the Gadamu and the Sufi orders for straying from pure Islam. They emphasize the use of Arabic language and the practice in the Middle East as model. And they use modernizing as their rhetoric, which helped them to gain backing of political powers of the Qing dynasty, the warlords later on, and the nationalists and communists as well in the 20th century. So they emphasize more should be simple. And so we switch back to the authors of Han Kitab from the 16th century, going through the 17th century and 18th century in Nanjing, Suzhou, Yunnan, etc. So for this scholar, Liu Zi is between 17th and 18th century, is Nanjing Ren, is from Nanjing. So he authored the book Tenfang Danli. Of course it's in Chinese, so it's translated, this part is translated as follows. The ritual of the pure and true comes from the teaching of the Arabic sage, and yet agrees in many ways with the ritual of Confucian. Therefore, frequently explain the points of this matter by using originally Confucian language to elucidate the meaning, wishing only for the people of this land to know what I have explained. Because Chinese people may not understand the Islamic teachings easily. In particular, of course, not through Arabic, must be through the Chinese language. And in the Chinese language, many philosophical concepts are explained in the Confucian teachings. So the scholars at that time, the Islamic scholars at that time, use the Confucian teachings, the terms of the Confucian teachings to explain the Islamic teachings as well. So that's the demographic of Muslims in China nowadays, basically. So you can see there's a concentration of Muslims in Xinjiang, and then Qinghai, Gansu, and then Yunnan, etc. So the Muslim population is about 1.5% or 20 million. Majority in Xinjiang, belonging to the ethnic group of Uyghur, also some Hui in Xinjiang as well. In the Gansu, uh, you have the majority of Han now, because there has been migration all along in the past decades. So Hui is only 5% in Gansu, but there is a Ningxia Hui autonomous prefecture, which has a population of 2 million. In Qinghai, Hui is a bit more, is 16%. You have also other uh, Muslim minor ethnic minority, like the Salar. Salar has 2%. And you have the Ningxia. Ningxia has 34% of Hui, so it's an autonomous region. So it's basically, of course, you have Muslims in all the big coastal cities as well and mosques there, but this is with a less percentage. And we just mentioned about the majority area where Muslims reside in China. So some pictures about Muslims and mosques. So we must mention about the Muslim rebellions in Qing, because there used to be people who wanted to divide between Muslims and Chinese in that period. And even though the Qing dynasty may not fall into deceived by these people, but there were some misunderstandings and also unequal treatment between Muslims and Chinese. And there were rebellions in the 1760s from the Uyghur, especially after the annexation of Xinjiang. And also in the 1780s in Gansu, is by Hui. It's also the two Sufi orders. One belongs to the old teaching, one belongs to the new teaching. They were rebel leaders in Gansu. And also between 1850s and 1870s, there were rebellions from Muslims in northwest and southwest regions, mainly because of the unrest arising from the unequal treatment between Chinese and Muslims at that time, and also the Iron Fist suppression of the Qing army. So then comes the Republic of China in the early 20th century. So, so the Chinese Republic at that time emphasized the Chinese nationality as the 中华民族, and the five races consisting of Han, Manchu, Mongol, Hui, and Tibetan should be in harmony together. So that's a five-color flag here. So at the time, the Hui Muslims enjoy better treatment and during the reign of the Republic of China. And also in I think starting from 1933, Egypt started to accept Chinese students into the Al-Azhar University, a famous university in Egypt. Yeah, those three. You can see the picture of the students studying there in the 1930s. So, so the process is you see the immigration of Muslims starting. In fact, if a spreading of Islam to China starts in Tang Dynasty. So if we talk about the Muslims, immigration starts in Tang, and they have intermarriage and assimilation, naturalization, simultaneity, and uh, gives rise to the ethnic minority as Hui, with varying degrees of influence from Chinese and Islamic cultural spheres. Because Hui is a diversified group of Muslims in China. It's just for convenience that uh, the Chinese authority used to call Chinese Muslims as Hui. But in fact, many Hui Muslims may be from diverse background as well. So you can see pictures of Hui, pictures in the family. In fact, yeah, we have a special martial arts uh, of Muslims in China as well. Yeah, so to show that what is practicing the martial art of Muslims in Guangzhou, the mosque in the old mosque in Guangzhou. So learning Arabic and the Islamic teachings. So next is the People's Republic of China, which is also the current ruling power. And regarding the Minzu system of PRC, so of course the majority is Han. Um, it's 91.5%, with 8.5% belonging to 55 minority nationalities. And these nationalities are distinguished by their territoriality, language, livelihood, and psychological characteristics. For Muslim minority nationalities, 10 groups are identified. Hui, Uyghur, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Uzbek, Tatar, Salar, Buan, Dongxiang, and Tajik. So with the territorial expansion, so the 10 Muslim minority ethnicities are included in the boundary of China. And see pictures of different Muslim nationalities, Uyghurs as well as the largest nationality. So, of course, they reside mainly in Xinjiang, and this is a famous mosque in Xinjiang, Khasgar. So, a picture, shaking hand. So, we talk about the constitution of PRC. Regarding Article 4, the state protects the lawful rights and interests of minority nationalities and upholds and develops the relationship of equality, unity, and mutual assistance among all of China's nationalities. Discrimination against and oppression of any nationality are prohibited. And the following is important, is any acts that undermine the unity of the nationalities or instigate their secession are prohibited. So this is emphasized by PRC as well. Article 36, citizens of the People's Republic of China shall enjoy freedom of religious belief. No state organ or social organization or individual shall coerce citizens to believe in or not to believe in any religion, nor shall they discriminate against citizens who believe in or do not believe in any religion. So it's basically religious freedom or freedom not to believe as well. And law of the PRC on regional national autonomy. We have autonomous areas in the country. The organs of self-government of national autonomous areas shall guarantee the freedom of religious belief to citizens of the various nationalities. No state organ, public organization, or individual may compel citizens to believe in or not to believe in any religion, nor may they discriminate against citizens who believe in or do not believe in any religion. The state shall protect normal religious activities. No one may make use of religion to engage in activities that disrupt public order, impair the health of citizens, or interfere with the educational system of the state. So this is also important because it touches on the educational system of the state. Religious body and religious affairs shall not be subject to any foreign domination. This is also in particular, of course, it's mainly about we Muslim ethnic minority, but the foreign domination is particularly were relevant to the Catholic Church as well. However, the Constitution guarantees a religious freedom, but these constitutional rights may be ignored or violated when coming into practice. A rapid economic development in the ethnic autonomous area has resulted in widespread social and economic inequalities. We have to explain these social and economic inequalities in more details, which provides the breeding ground for social instability, spread of separatism, as well as hatred between the ethnic minorities and hence in the ethnic autonomous areas. So in the past decades, Han people, nationality, moved in large numbers to the Muslim used to be a majority area like Xinjiang, Gansu, Ningxia, etc. Because the Muslim areas were poorer in general. We know that China developed the eastern coastal cities first, and then the western areas were put on a lower priority in the development. So, so the economic development is not in parallel and resulting in some inequalities. That means the coastal cities are wealthier, but the western areas are poorer, especially those occupied by Muslims in the west, northwest or southwest. And even though the Han Chinese moved to these areas, they were mostly more educated and get a better job than the local people, local Muslims. So that's also there is parity between the two or different nationalities. And also the treatment up to 2021, because the central government noticed this inequality, they try to favor the ethnic minorities in, say, providing education, just like for university admission for two candidates of equal results, academic results. And if there is only one place left, then the place will be given to the ethnic minority, mostly, of course, the Muslims in these areas. And also there may be quotas, especially the reserved for the minorities. So in another way, you can see the Han Chinese may not be happy because these are also preferential treatment for the minorities against the Han Chinese. So there are not very the relationship could not be said to be very harmonious in these areas. So the separatist Muslim groups, according to the historical context, first you can see um, there were imperial Chinese expansions into Central Asia in the past. For example, the Qing dynasty. And in the 19th century, there is a so-called Great Game between China, Russia, and UK, competing for loyalties among tribal groups, especially in the Central Asia. Communists give official status of national minorities in the Minzu system. And in the late 20th century, with the breakup of the Soviet Union um, into different Central Asian countries, that may sow the separatist movements, um, like in Xinjiang, because there uh, have arisen a lot of stands in Central Asia, and Xinjiang uh, was then also used the term as East Turkestan by some separatist movement. So you can see the breakdown of the Soviet Union into different Central Asian countries here and bordering China, you can see. So about the Soviet influence in 1921, they sponsored a conference in Tashkent where the people embraced their name of Uyghur people, tracing lineage back to the original old Uyghur Khanate. But in fact, the Uyghur people um, lived in the northwestern part of China for a long, long time, even before Tang Dynasty. But they were, of course, not yet Muslims because Islam spread to China from the Tang Dynasty. They were originally associated with the Buddhist belief and later on converted to Islam. The Soviets tried to spread Uyghur nationalism to push their own interests and gave promises of independent states similar to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. The Republic of China countered such propaganda by demonstrating how these areas lost their religious heritage. Now you can also find some riots in Xinjiang during the early 21st century in Urumqi here, and also even in the Kunming railway station, also triggered by the separatist Xinjiang movement. So, in fact, as I have shown a couple of slides earlier, a lot of Central Asian countries uh, borders China, and China is promoting the Belt and Road initiatives for over 10 years now. And this is about different routes through the Belt and Road proposed by China. So you can see these routes crosses Central Asia to the Middle East and up to Europe. And nowadays, you'll find these Muslim countries are mostly on friendly terms with China, and you can hardly find any Muslim countries in the Central Asian or Middle East um, that are supporting the separatist movement in Xinjiang. And the last one who may receive refugees or uh, political asylum seekers from Xinjiang, maybe Turkey. But I think in recent years, Turkey is also uh, seen to be less supportive of any separatist Xinjiang movement, and instead they may be bridging between China and Uyghur group in recent years. And so I'll talk about well, the prospect of any separatist movement if come from Muslims or Xinjiang Muslims. What may be the prospects? So, but we first look at pilgrimage first. This is Mecca, where Muslims go for pilgrimage or Hajj. And this is also the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, where most pilgrims will go. This is Hui Muslims on Hajj. And in 2012, there were 13,800 Chinese pilgrims. And I think year on year, there are over 10,000 Chinese pilgrims every year going for pilgrimage to Mecca every year. So is of course organized centrally by the Chinese government because to get the visa from Saudi Arabia and also for the large Muslim countries, there's quota for these Hajj visas as well. So some statistics from the Wikipedia. There are approximately 36,000 places of worship in China, with more than 45,000 imams and 10 Islamic schools. These are formal Islamic schools in China, or we call that a 经学院 in Chinese. In Xinjiang alone, is about 24,400 mosques and an average of one mosque for every 500 something Muslims. So if you compare with number of mosques in Hong Kong, so is has a much larger number of mosques and also per head as compared with Hong Kong. Not a bad statistics at least. So some different mosques in China. Again, is in Guangzhou, the Light Tower Mosque, or sometimes another name is Huaixing Mosque. So this one is in Xi'an, Chinese style. This one is Beijing, very famous, Chinese style. And this inside, the same mosque. This is in Mongolia, is a hybrid style. This is more traditional style or Middle Eastern style. This is Ningxia. So Yunnan, also Middle Eastern style with minarets at the four corners and the dome. So about Sinicization. So I'll talk more about Sinicization, but we just look at some pictures about part of the meaning of Sinicization. So you can see a mosque need not be in traditional style with a big dome in the center and four minarets at the four corners. And you can see this is a very traditional Chinese architecture. This is also a mosque. So this is traditional Middle Eastern architecture. But nowadays, the Sinicization also includes the Arabization. So that means we used to include the Arabic word halal side by side with the Chinese character qingzhen in the restaurants. But nowadays, you can see mostly only the Chinese characters will remain, and the Arabic letters, halal, will be covered. You can see the example here. And also, the doom will be removed. Since the pictures here, this is in Yunnan. No, sorry, in Ningxia. So also the doom remove, also remove. You can see without the doom. So in China, you can find this slogan, love one's country, love one's religion, in every mosque. Um, so, um, so it's nothing wrong in loving one's country, basically. And of course, we also love our religion, and it's in every mosque in China, basically. I want to talk about the latest policy on religions in China. So, in fact, over the centuries, there have been periods or dynasties that give more freedom to religions. Of course, I'm talking about Islam in particular, but in general, um, apart from Taoism, most of the religions are foreign religions. If you talk about in the viewpoint of Han Chinese. So, like in the Yuan dynasty, the Mongol Empire, um, for Muslims, Muslims used to enjoy more freedom during the dynasty. But in other dynasty, like in Qing dynasty, Muslims, well, you can say were more suppressed, and the policy on religions tightened up during that time. And even in the PRC nowadays, there are periods where religions may be really more controlled or with more restrictions, like the Cultural Revolution, of course. And but before the current policy, the policy on religion may be looser, I should say. Um, and I also mentioned about the preferential policy for the ethnic minorities, like in education or in other welfare, in fact. But the latest is a little bit different now. I'll mention about that. And the latest policy on religion in China is not too loose and not too tight. And the government wants to guide the religions, talking about all the religions, not just Islam. And you can see there are different working philosophy in the principle of guidance. One is to strengthen the political guidance. Two, strengthen religious ideology and culture. Three is strengthen constructing religious systems. Four, strengthen developing religious talent. Five, strengthen the concept of the rule of law in religious circles. And six, give full play to the positive role of religious circles. In fact, the different religious authorities in China, they have some government background, I should say, even though they may not be entirely a government bureau or department, but the leaders, they have some backing by the Chinese government. But it happens from time to time. Just recently, is the Buddhism, the famous mosque of China, the head of, not mosque, I mean the monastery. Um, um, uh, well, it's discovered that he did not abide by the law, and he was caught and is going through the judicial system. And in the point five in particular is to regulate as these are religious leaders, even though they may be backed by the government, but they are not on their own. They should follow the rule of law as well, instead of being separate from the law on the different religions. So there's also two particular points to note is the nature of the policy is to uphold freedom of religious belief, or also to upload the freedom of not to believe as well. Because in China, it has the largest group of people without religion or religious belief in the whole world. Yeah. According to some statistical study, there should be only about 1.2 billion people in the world without any religious belief. But Chinese already has a population of over 1.4 billion. And it's believed that only about 0.2 billion may have religious beliefs. So if you just have this simple mathematical calculation, it seems that according to that statistical study, almost most of the people without any belief in whole world comes from China. Yeah. And so it's for us Chinese Muslims is a big burden on us to let other fellow Chinese to know about Islam and especially the truth and teachings of Islam. The next is about the direction of the policy. The direction is to promote the Sinicization of religions in China. So because China is promoting the superiority of the Chinese culture and all religions, even the local religions like Taoism, should adopt Sinicization, even though it's a local religion. So for foreign religions, including Islam, Catholics, Protestant, Buddhism as well, should go for Sinicization, even though all the foreign religions I mentioned gone through Sinicization during the previous centuries, not even decades, but further Sinicization is to be promoted according to the latest policy in China. So we have some issues to reflect. So we talk about love our religion and love our country. So is it about melding of religion and nationalism? So how should we Muslims view about that? And how does promotion of Han cultural superiority, there are a lot of Confucius institutes all around the world, and also the Luban workshops in foreign countries. Their primary objective is to promote the Chinese or Han culture overseas. And how does it affect Muslims in China? And also, in order to develop the economy in the ethnic minority areas, in the Muslim areas, in the Northwest or Southwest, is tourism is promoted for the Han Chinese to visit the Muslim areas in Northwest or in the Southwest. So, of course, it's to highlight the diversity of China and to promote the different cultures of these ethnic minorities in the regions. and um, and also by promoting tourism, is in a way to provide an alternative livelihood and enhance their economic position in the areas. So, so just want to reflect about these two uh, Quranic verses. One is from Surah 49, verse 13. O humanity, indeed, we created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Another verse from Surah 30. And one of its signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth and the diversity of the languages and colors. Surely in this are signs for those of sound knowledge. So we know that Islam um, we can say encourages diversity. And we can adopt Islam in our own culture. Of course, we must follow the Islamic principles, but there's nothing wrong to adopt Islam into our culture. For example, I've been asked by someone, non-Muslims, what's the Islamic cuisine? Well, I cannot answer this question because it depends on where you live, where you are, and halal food in China is different from halal food in India and different from halal food in the Middle East. So these are all Islamic cuisine, but there's no universal type of cuisine among all the Muslims. So Islam enjoys adaptation in different cultures as well. And next, we need to understand some facts about China. China, I need to update now. China is not the most populated country now. It's the second most populated because the most populated is now India. But still, not too far away. The numbers are similar. And China is the world's factory. We're talking about the technology. And in fact, if you base on PPP, Purchasing Power Parity, China is the top country in the world already for quite a few years, and it's also the third strongest military power. Next, I should draw the attention to a survey by the Ash Center from Harvard in the 2016. Is the 95.5% of respondents in China, we're talking about in China, were either relatively satisfied or highly satisfied with Beijing. So, well, from these factual information, so it's hard to imagine how separatism is still viable in China. So, I'll further discuss this point. Will Muslims be adversely affected by Sinization? It depends. If we are strong in our own culture, of course, I mean the Islamic culture, we will not be adversely affected by Sinization, but Sinization will help us to promote Islam or Islamic teachings to Han Chinese. So it depends on us whether we know our Islam well, or if we don't know our Islam well, we'll be affected by Sinization. Just like I've mentioned about different Muslim groups in China, and the old group were criticized for being too Chinese and deviate from pure Islam by other groups. Next is about Hui Muslims versus Uyghurs, because in some reasons, I mean, in the say 2009, in the Urumqi. Um, the riots at that time um, also affected Hui Muslims. So Hui Muslims were also victims. So not just Han Chinese during those riots. So and also it seems that the Chinese government also distinguished between different groups of Muslims. Say Hui is not grouped together as Uyghurs. For us Muslims, um, since we don't have any caliphate now, and there's no central authority except in our belief, the authority is Quran and Sunnah. So as contrast with the Catholic Church, the authority is the Pope, and in the Tibetan Buddhism is the Dalai Lama. Um, and I mentioned about the internet or social media or the like in general is although information is well censored or filtered in China, but there are still um, well internet um, spreading of information within China, although for those extremists, I should say, information may not be able to filter into China, but the general information can be searched within China through the internet or other social media, etc. So if the authentic teachings of Islam definitely, these are not prohibited or banned or suppressed through the internet in China. Even I belong to the Chinese Muslim Cultural and Fraternal Association, and we host, I believe, to be the largest Chinese site, uh, well, in the world, I can say, and in Hong Kong with the traditional Chinese webpage, and in China with the simplified Chinese webpage. And we don't see any particular problem in spreading Islam with our websites in China and within the Chinese in China. So about the concept of PRC protecting religious freedom, and I must also mention that the Constitution of PRC also protects the freedom of not to believe in religion. So I mentioned about the education system is that it is not allowed for Muslims to, well, infiltrate into the education system and promote Islam in the educational system, even in the autonomous region. So that's how it's interpreted as the Constitution of religious freedom and non-religious freedom, or freedom of no religion or no religious belief. We must understand the context in this way. And as the minority policy of PRC has changed since 2021 because of a couple of central and national conferences held in that year. So, as according to the Chinese authority, extreme poverty has been alleviated by 2020. So, the poverty region were mostly, of course, I've said the western part, northwestern or southwestern part of China. And these areas were major areas where China tried to develop the economy in the last decade, I can say. But since 2020, there was initial success. Of course, there may be poverty here and there, but there is no more extreme poverty in China as declared. And so the policy has changed with the ethnic minorities in China, is that they no longer enjoy preferential treatment, like in education, as I've mentioned, and in other areas. So nowadays, the Han Chinese and other ethnic minorities or nationalities are treated equally. So that's the current policy. So we must understand that. Before 2021, Muslim minority enjoy some preferential treatment, but not after 2021. So now comes the question. So we go for amity or animosity if the current policy is no longer so favorable to ethnic minorities or religious minority. So I want to quote some lessons from the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah as follows. So it's a treaty signed by Muslims with the Quraysh in Mecca in the year 628. So the Muslims propose or intended to go for pilgrimage, visit the Kaaba, but they were not allowed to do so that year. But with the signing of the treaty, they will be allowed to go for pilgrimage in Mecca in the next year for a period of 3 days. And the treaty also signed to hold a ceasefire between the parties for a period of 10 years. And during this time, people were supposed to live in safety and harmony. It was decided that the agreement between any tribe and the Prophet was not prohibited, and vice versa. So it's all concerned with peace and harmony. But the last one is not equal among the two signing parties. For if any Meccan accepted Islam and sought sanctuary with the Muslims in Medina, they would extradite him to Mecca. So Muslims seeking sanctuary would be extradited to Mecca. But if a Muslim fleeing from Medina sought sanctuary with the pagans in Mecca, they would not extradite him. So with the signing of this agreement, some Sahaba were not very happy. They questioned Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as well, but they willingly or unwillingly need to accept the treaty. And with the final bullet, in fact, at least two known Sahaba were required to be extradited to Mecca. Yeah, so some of the Sahaba were not very happy indeed. And also the treaty, the Meccans did not allow Prophet Muhammad to use the term Muhammad as the apostle of God, and Prophet Muhammad can only use his own name to sign the treaty. So, well, even if some Sahaba did not agree, but Prophet Muhammad agreed to use his own name only. Yeah. So I want to quote another Sahih from Muslim, narrated by Abu Huraira, that the Prophet ﷺ said, "It is obligatory for you to listen to the ruler and obey him in adversity and prosperity, in pleasure and displeasure, and even when another person is given preference over you." So note this hadith first. So there are important points to note from this hadith. Obedience is required in both ease and hardship, whether one agrees or disagrees with the ruler's decisions. Exception: no obedience is due if the ruler commands something sinful outside the fold of Islam. So that's the exception, of course. The purpose, these teachings aim to preserve unity, stability, and prevent chaos within the community. Because Islam, the principle um, promoted by Islam is harmony, communal harmony. So, of course, different people have different ideas or opinions. So, if everybody only allow his opinions to prevail, so there will be chaos in the community. So, the teachings of Islam ask us to preserve unity, stability within the community. And that's why we have the hadith from Muslim uh, asking us, even if the policy or the ruler makes a decision not in our favor, we need to accept because, of course, we know that any policy cannot be 100% favorable to everybody. Yeah, someone from their own viewpoint may consider that may not be justice for them, but that's their own opinion. So that hadith asks us to be patient. Patience is also character for us Muslims to follow. So key lessons. Patience can resolve every problem. So, in fact, those Sahaba not agreeing with the Prophet Muhammad in signing the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, um, they, well, were patient to obey, the decision of the Prophet, even though they may not agree or satisfy, they were not satisfied with the agreement or treaty. Raising your sword is not always the answer. So, of course, first of all, I want to quote, I don't have the exact hadith or the source in the slides, but I can say that there were different battles fought by Muslims with non-Muslims during the time of Prophet Muhammad SAW, and some were regarded as miracles in Islam, and the Muslims were fought with the assistance of angels sent by Allah to assist them and to gain victory in the battle. But before we rely on the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we must assess our own position, our plan. We must plan on our own to achieve the best results. It's not, it has never been the history of Islam in the period of Prophet Muhammad SAW, that even with Allah on his side, he will not go for any battle without any chance of success. Even if in minority, going to battle with a minority of people, that does not mean an extreme minority. At most up to 1 to 10. You can't fight 1 against 100. So it's no way you should raise your sword if you are in such a minority in the battle. So you have to think of other ways to resolve the problem or the situation. And Muslims should honor agreements. If we live in a non-Muslim country, in fact, it's a contract or agreement between us and the country. We agree to abide by the law of the country if we live there. So it's also a kind of agreement between us, even though we have a different faith than maybe the majority population of the country. So if we are not asked to disobey our religious teachings, then we should honor terms in the agreements, which even be not in our favor. Yeah, that's the agreement we need to follow or adapt if we continue to live in the country. Otherwise, we may choose to migrate if we have the means. And now we quote a verse from the Holy Quran, which is from Surah 48, verse number 1. This verse is associated with the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. It reads, O Prophet, surely we have granted you a clear victory. So, as I mentioned about the terms or conditions of the treaty, especially the last bullet, many, or at least a few Sahaba, if not many, didn't think that is a good term indeed. So, and after the return to Medina, and they receive this verse revealed to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and it mentioned that it's a clear victory. So those Sahaba and other commentators on the Holy Quran, they consider the victory means the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, not the following victory in the coming years, the conquest of Mecca. They don't consider the victory to be the conquest of Mecca. The victory means the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So if you read the terms and conditions I've just mentioned in the previous slide, you know that we interpret victory as a peaceful, harmonious way to promote Islam at that time. Because with that treaty, there will be a 10-year, you say, peace without battles. And even though the terms are not or in favor of Muslims, but Muslims can go for Hajj or pilgrimage to Mecca the following year, and they can have agreement with other tribes as well. So basically, Islam is free to preach to other areas, except for Mecca, probably, because if the pagans in Mecca believed in Islam and they go to Medina, but according to the treaty, the Muslims in Medina need to extradite them back to Mecca. But in other areas and other tribes, and Islam is free to preach and convert the tribes neighboring or further away. So if we have patience and confidence in Allah, and we believe in the superiority of the Islamic truth, so as long as we have peace and harmony, we should not be afraid of, for example, the current policy of China on religions, of Sinicization. The only fear is that we don't know our religion. That is the fear. We should be really look after, rather than if we are strong, then we should not be fear of being pulled far away from Islam by Sinicization, but as an opportunity to introduce Islam to the vast majority of Han Chinese who, according to the statistics I quote from the study, that the majority of those without belief or faith in the whole world may be Han Chinese. So if especially for Chinese Muslims, we have a very large burden on our back, on our shoulder, that we did really do something on this situation, and Allah knows best. So basically, I want to finish today's presentation here, and maybe if we still have a little time, it's open to some questions maybe, and I give back to the host. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the very informative presentation. If anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask by opening your mic or typing in the chat box. And while you're thinking of any questions, I want to make an announcement for everyone to stay behind after the Q&A is over for an announcement. Thank you.
So if there is no particular questions, I want to show two more slides. Yeah, there's a bonus. One is about I mentioned about we need to promote Islam to the Han Chinese because they may be the largest group of non-believers in the world. So it's from the Quran again, Surah 16, verse 125. Invite all to the way of your Lord with wisdom and kind advice, and only debate with them in the best manner. Surely your Lord alone knows best, who has strayed from his way and who is rightly guided. So we need to learn our religion, and we need to learn how to explain our religion to others. So, Alhamdulillah, um, I think the audience here are trying to learn, and so this is at least the first step forward. And I also just share the information I gather. I hope the information I presented is accurate, but free to counter check yourself. And I try my best to keep the information accurate as far as possible, inshallah. And also, the last slide, I think this may not be very accurate, but at least you have a feel of the difference between different Chinese groups among different regions. I mentioned before, mainland China, the majority of Han Chinese um, are non-Muslims, but for Islam, the Muslim population should be about 1.5. So this is not very accurate. And I think we may assume that the followers of religious belief in China may be 0.2 billion. So this is not a very accurate figure in mainland China. In Hong Kong, it's very different because Hong Kong has a colonial history. So you can see Hong Kong in particular has a large following of the Christian faith and fewer non-believers, only half, as compared with mainland China. And Taiwan is also different. China without the colonial history, Christian colonial history, I should say. Taiwan has its own colonial history, but not colonized. Also, for once or another, like the Dutch, also Christians, but not for so long. And so it's different. Christians only account for 7% according to this figure, but it's more spread out with only 27% with no religion and more Buddhism and Taoism. And Singapore is definitely different because it's a more diverse society, not only Chinese, of course, Chinese majority, but with also Muslims, mainly Malay, and also Indians, mainly Hinduism. So you can see also fewer with no religion. and more Buddhism, and of course more Muslims, 15%, and with more Hinduism. Hinduism used to be well, the main religion in India, but not elsewhere. Only very few followers of Hinduism in the rest of the world. So that's the last slide I want to share. So I give it back to the host again.
Alhamdulillah, there's still quite a number of Muslims in Hong Kong. Hopefully, the number grows. But yeah, I think we can end the session here. I'll stop the recording.